The History Channel now returns to Secret Passages.
Just outside rustic Tule Lake, California, nature provides a series of unique secret passages known as the lava beds. And in 1870, they are home to a group of desperate Modoc Indians trying to defy the U.S. cavalry order to relocate them. As the nation pushes to its western borders, Native Americans are treated as foreigners. After centuries of living in relative anonymity, the Modoc Indians suddenly have new neighbors, white neighbors who claim Modoc land as their own. It isn't long before the government forces the Modoc onto a reservation far from their home. Appalled with their new surroundings, in April of 1870, half of the 300 Modoc leave the reservation to return to their native land to the south. Their leader is Kintpuash, known to the white settlers as Captain Jack.
Captain Jack was a young man, very young to have as much power and influence as he did. He was only in his late 30s, we think.
Moving swiftly into familiar territory, Captain Jack leads his band of men, women, and children into an area of the California lava beds, now known as Captain Jacks Stronghold. 3 acres wide, it is a hazardous and confusing maze of natural lava tubes, sharp rock formations, narrow passageways, and dark caves. The perfect defensive fortification for the Modoc. Millions of years of violent volcanic eruptions create the rugged environment of the stronghold.
When the lava hit the water, it cooled very quickly. Cracks opened in the surface. It began to pile up, and what you wind up with is a very tumbled landscape with rings of piled rock and crevices in between, and a few small caves.
Upon learning of the Modoc hiding place, the army gathers its troops to assault the stronghold.
When everybody was in the stronghold, there were 169 people. Of that, about 56 men who were warriors. But you also had women, children, and elderly. These were people who had come in with not much more than the clothing on their backs.
On January 17, 1872, 300 Army stronghold soldiers attempt to surround the Modoc. But the unfamiliar terrain proves impenetrable for the soldiers.
The soldiers find it very hard going. They had not done a very good job of reconnoitering the terrain, which they find extremely rough. It's very foggy. The troops begin to get panicky, and then when the Modocs open fire, it gets even worse.
The rockwork of the lava beds provided both cover and concealment, to use modern tactical terms. For the Modoc, who knew the territory, being able to disappear, knowing what route to take if someone was pursuing them, provided a perfect defense.
Making effective use of the natural secret passages, the Modoc band is able to hold the U.S. Army at bay during a 2-day siege, while inflicting heavy casualties on the Army. The soldiers never get within 400 yards of Captain Jack's stronghold.
Because of the way that they were able to move, the Modocs literally were able to move unseen quite often. Soldiers would claim they never saw a Modoc in combat. One man said, "I was hit by them twice and never saw the man who shot at me."
The government next attempts to bargain with the Modoc. Captain Jack wants a separate reservation for his people. Negotiators will offer only safe transport to a new home in Arizona. The Modoc are left no choice. Compromise is out of the question.
It's beginning to get clear that the Modocs are running out of time. Their food is almost gone. Their clothing is in rags. Most of the people in the stronghold are sick. And even by this point, the warriors are beginning to run out of ammunition.
Hooker Jim, Captain Jack's closest cousin, distrusts the U.S. government. Reluctantly, on April 11, 1873, the Modoc agree to a final meeting with the Peace Commission, led by Brigadier General Canby. But if things go wrong, Hooker Jim has a surprise plan.
Jack is just about ready to give in to General Canby's demands. Well, Hooker Jim and his people realize that, and they don't want that to happen. They know that no matter what these white leaders say about fair treatment, for them, a surrender will almost certainly mean a trial in a white man's court and hanging from a white man's rope. So they develop their own plan born of desperation. Now, when two Indian tribes fight, if the war leader dies, the warriors go home. So they present their plan to Captain Jack. Kill General Canby and the members of the Peace Commission and as many other army leaders as you can lay your hands on, and you will so frighten the soldiers that they'll go away.
Captain Jack disagrees, but has no choice. Most of his warriors side with Hooker Jim. On the day of the negotiation, the Modoc open fire on the Peace Commission. General Canby and Reverend Thomas are murdered. The U.S. Army furiously responds to the murders 4 days later, on April 15, 1873, and the lava beds once again erupt in torrents of hot steel and fire. After 2 days of fierce fighting, the Army finally captures Captain Jacks Stronghold. But it is a hollow victory. Jack and the remaining Modoc have escaped. It takes the cavalry 3 months to capture Jack and hang him for the murder of General Canby. It's another 6 months for the cavalry to round up Hooker Jim and the remaining Modoc, and despite their protests, relocate them to Oklahoma. Perhaps the bloodiest of all secret passages, the lava beds of Northern California temporarily protected a vanishing nation. But in the end, the military might of the U.S. government proved too strong for the once proud tribe of Modoc.